everyone, and welcome back to Comic Book Issues. I'm your host, The Last Angry Geek. And it's time for another one of our vlog reviews. I just saw The Black Panther, and I really liked this film. It was a lot of fun. It's not great. It's not like rewriting the superhero genre like some people have said. I will say that the audience I saw this with in a movie theater was 90% African American, and the audience really loved it. So take that for what it's worth. The woman next to me was about a 50-year-old black lady in a fur coat, and she was going, ooh, ah, ooh, every time there was a fight scene, especially the T'Challa versus M'Baku fight. But she was a very nice lady. We talked a bit. She was really nice, and she really liked the movie. That said, I did have some story issues, and I did have some issues with the special effects and the acting. But let's break it down by the cast. First, of course, is Chadwick Boseman reprising his role from Captain America Civil War as the Black Panther, Prince, now King, T'Challa. He was not as angry a character as he was in Civil War. If anything, he seemed more sad and subdued. And there was kind of an urge to prove himself as a king, to quench the doubts within that he was able to do this. He was dealing with his father's murder in Civil War, so here, that's past. Now it's time to... this takes place almost immediately after Civil War. Now he's got to claim his throne and make his mark to, kind of establish himself as the new king beyond his simple blood right. It was a very understated performance, and I liked that. It was not too over the top in any way. It wasn't like really big. It wasn't a really big, funny performance. It wasn't a really big, dramatic performance. I mean, he played it very kind of... he plays T'Challa as a very kind of mellow, soft-spoken character, which T'Challa is, so I really think he got it right. This is probably the best... Some of the best casting I've seen in the Marvel Universe was putting Chadwick as the Black Panther, because he's really... He plays the part exactly as I've always pictured T'Challa when I read the comic books. Beyond that, I don't have a lot to say. He did a very good job as this character. He knows what he's doing, and I trust him, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of T'Challa in the Avengers Infinity War, and hopefully we'll get a Black Panther sequel, because I wouldn't mind that. Michael B. Jordan as Killmonger, and it was a very nuanced, complex performance. I'm not sure I exactly know what I want to say about it. He was bringing a lot to the table, but as a white man from a suburban background, I'm not sure I could really relate to a lot of the things he was saying. That said, I knew where he was coming from. I could empathize with him. But that said, it's not my experience that he's speaking to. I will say, and this goes towards my story issues with the movie, that it was a character we've seen before. The wronged relative who comes from nowhere to challenge the status quo and upset the order. And he's kind of that monster of the family's own making, like, oh, we did wrong. Now he's come back to right that wrong, but he's going to make everything much worse. It's that he's a very sympathetic villain. We can see where he's coming from. We can understand his pain and his rage. What I did like about this character is we didn't know what he was about right away. I mean, he starts out as kind of the front man for Claw's robbery operations. And then we see how ruthless he is. He kills his girlfriend to get to Claw. I mean, it's like nothing is going to stop him and this ambition for... this complete kind of lust for vengeance that has been driving him his whole life. And he's a very driven character, but then that dream sequence vision quest thing he does where he talks to his father, that, you can't help but feel for him. He was wronged. He had something he loved taken away from him. So it's a very sympathetic villain, but he's also completely ruthless and bloodthirsty. As I said, it's a character we've seen before, but Michael B. Jackson does a very good job of putting a nice kind of fresh spin on him, and they keep you guessing for about the first half of the film with him. In fact, I should say, like, the movie goes through three villains: the Ape Tribe and M'Baku, then Ulysses Claw, and then finally Killmonger. I guess I'm saying that the character is one I've seen before, but the writers put enough spin on it to keep you guessing and to make the performance enjoyable, even if the character is a little bit of a cliche that we've seen before. Lupita Nyong'o as Nakia, and I do apologize if I'm getting any of the actors' names wrong. That's not my intent. Unfortunately, while she is a good actress and she's enjoyable enough in the film, it was, again, another case of a character we've seen before. The I'm so strong because I'm going to reject this traditional path. I love Black Panther, but I need to be out there helping people instead of being with him. It's that That's a character we've seen a lot in cinema. I was glad that she wasn't intimidated by T'Challa and his position, but then I don't think anybody was, except maybe the Everett Ross character. There's not much to say here. Like, I don't want to dismiss the performances, because I think almost all the cast did a great job, but some of the characters were just archetypes that I've seen before in these films, and that's the case with Nakia. Denny Garaya as Okoye was a much better female character than the Nakia character was. She's just as much an ass kicker as the Black Panther. She had a lot of great fight sequences. What I like that as the leader of the Dora Milaje, she has this position in her society that she can't reject. She was very conflicted when Killmonger takes over. She has to do her duty protecting the king. At the same time, her emotional connection to the royal family, who have been her friends all this time, she wants to protect them. She wants to save them from him, but she has to stay and serve. And I enjoyed that kind of conflict. And she's a fun character. She has some good one-liners. This is another character I hope we see more of in the Marvel Universe. My only issues with her was with the boyfriend character, but we'll get to that when I talk about him. Letitia Wright as Shuri. Okay, this was the breakout performance of the film. She was just great, and I thought she was funny. I mean, this girl has a ton of charisma. I don't think we necessarily needed her to be the girl genius who comes up with Black Panther's tech. I mean, I suppose we needed the Q character when you have somebody that relies on a lot of technology, but is not the person who invents the technology, like Tony Stark. So you need somebody there to explain the stuff to the character and the audience. So I get that she was fulfilling a role, but I would have been happy with this actress and this character if she hadn't been the tech genius. She could have just been his sister. In fact, I couldn't even remember the character's name when the movie was over. I just kept thinking of her as little sister. Some people said they didn't like this character. They found her abrasive, and I get that. Whenever you put someone who's really young and make them very brash, sometimes that's off-putting, but to me it worked here. And I like that her relationship with, she was kind of T'Challa's ballbuster. She was kind of, they had that sibling rivalry, like, why are you filming this? Well, because just punch it, You erased that video! I like that there was teasing going on back and forth, and she's just kind of busting his chops like any kind of snotty little sister might. So I really liked her. I think great actress. This was a breakout performance for her. I know she was on Doctor Who once, but I barely remember her in that when I looked it up. But this was a great role for anyone, and I think Letitia Wright did a great job. She was just wonderful. That's all I can say. Martin K. Freeman was back as Everett Ross again from Civil War, and unfortunately, I don't feel like this character had much to do in this. He was more of like a plot device, so that they could bring an outsider to Wakanda. I never felt like anything he did was that necessary or couldn't have been done by another character. So, I mean, Martin K. In the comic book, I think Christopher Priest and Mark Texier had the definitive run of Black Panther during the Marvel Knights imprint in the 90s. And that's where Everett K. Ross was introduced. And he was a very comedic character. We know Martin Freeman can do comedy, but they wrote him very straight-laced. And you didn't want to make him a joke after you used the character in Civil War and made him very serious. But I don't feel like his serious character brought anything to the table. I felt like Martin Freeman's Everett Ross was kind of a waste of a character. He had a few funny moments, don't get me wrong. Here, he was just kind of there for people to react to. And it felt like one character too many. His stuff could have been done by other people in the cast. That brings me to Andy Serkis as Ulysses Claw, and he was a great character. Okay, a friend of mine said that Martin Freeman and Andy Serkis were the token white guys in the film, and I hate him for coming up with that joke before I did. Schmiegel definitely had a better role than Bilbo in this. He was great, a lot of fun. He was just kind of reveling in, he was kind of, I don't want to say like a Joker character, but he was kind of just going around doing bad things and reveling in it, like, just, yeah, I'm an asshole, but that's who I am, and I love being an asshole, He's making jokes about, it's like, don't make me listen to your mixtape, He's listening to songs, he's singing. I like that they didn't give him, I like that he wasn't the noseless sound monster with a radar dish on his hand, but they gave him that kind of cyborg hand with the sonic power. So that was kind of a nice compromise between where the character was in Age of Ultron and where the character is in the comic books. Danielle Kaluuya as W'Kabi, who's kind of the best friend of T'Challa and also the boyfriend of Okoye. This is probably the character I had the most issues with, in that it just seemed like he was there just to be in these genial relationships with these two characters and then kind of betray them and switch them around after he gets, not wronged exactly, but cheated of that vengeance. He said, let me go with you. No, I'll take care of it. Oh, I didn't take care of it. We're not friends anymore. Oh, this new guy has brought me the body of my enemy. Now I'll support him over this man I've known for 30-some years. It just felt like he flipped on a dime and they didn't really explore that enough or give a good enough explanation as to why he did that. And it almost looks like they put him in this relationship with Okoye just so it's mentioned at the beginning and then it's mentioned at the very end of his last scene. It's like there was never any her approaching him with like, why are you doing this? I thought you were loyal to our friend. You know, there was never any interrogation on screen or asking why this character flipped or changed so much simply beyond getting the body of the man who killed his parents. It seemed like they were in a relationship just so she could have that line, I'd kill you for my country in a second, just to show how loyal she is to Wakanda. But I think we'd already established that when she refused to help the royal family and had to stay and serve Killmonger. This was a problematic character, and that's not the actor's fault. He was just underwritten. Winston Duke as M'Baku, that was the Man-Ape, a long-time Black Panther villain, and you think he's going to be the bad guy the way they set up the prologue and say the ape tribe are kind of the outsiders in Wakandan society. And he does show up, and they have that great fight scene. But then the character's motivations are never that clear to me. He seems to enjoy twisting the knife in T'Challa's back a little bit. It's like saying, yeah, I'm not going to help you. Why would I help you? I hate your guts, you know. But then, on the other hand, he does save his life. He gives his mother refuge, and then they show up at the end to save the day without really any explanation as to why he changed his mind. Again, the movie is kind of underwritten with certain characters, and we don't really understand what they're doing or why they're doing it. But that said, it was a fun character, and he does have some good, funny lines, and all that ape chanting to kind of shut everybody up that the tribe does. Just, I was like, whoa, what's that about moment? The character seems to be there just to both vex and aid T'Challa, and that's okay, because Winston Duke was both terrifying and charming at different points in the movie. As for Angela Bassett and Forrest Whitaker, I don't really have anything bad to say about them. It seemed like Forrest and Angela were just there to add star power to the cast list, but I didn't feel like their characters or their performances were really stellar. They were okay. There were no bad performances in this. There were just some that were really good and some that were but kudos to Angela for finally getting into a comic book movie after being rumored to be playing Storm in the X-Men films like for 20 years ago, and so she finally made it to a comic book film, so good for her. My problems with this story-wise is it's a story and a lot of archetypes that we've seen before. The one I'll throw out there is The Lion King, because there are a lot of plot similarities. It's the character, the new king, the old king dies, the new prince has to become the king, and he screws up or messes up somehow or gets overthrown by the new character who comes in from out of nowhere and says, I have this claim to the throne. They fight and he goes away. New king's terrible. Old king, old prince has to come back and take back the throne because he was born into this. He's right for this. This is his position and only he can do the job correctly. It would have been a much different movie if, once taking the throne, Killmonger had decided to become this charitable, wonderful king who helped everybody. But that's never the case in these stories. That's a story as old as time. So it's not a fresh story they're telling us here. They're just sticking superhero costumes and James Bond special effects on top of it. The CGI was good for most of this, except that final fight scene between Black Panther and Killmonger in the outfits. Some of the times they were flipping around, that was very obvious CGI, and I think they should do more motion capture, practical effects, wire work kind of stuff when they're doing fight scenes like that, because they were flipping around like that's so obviously not a real person. And that kind of thing can just take you out of a moment, as it did for me. Like, the CGI rhinos look fine. There was a lot of kind of Lord of the Rings moments in this, where you got the armies clashing, you got the big coronation ceremonies, the sweeping grand vistas, you know. Yeah, it was not a really fresh, great story, but there are a lot of great performances in it. Letitia Wright especially were wonderful. Andy Serkis was great as always. It's a good film. I like seeing it. I don't think I'd see it again. That said, if it were on like TV or if my friends wanted to watch it, I wouldn't object. I'd probably give this about 3.5 out of 5 stars. And I do think it's a good thing that we had a superhero film with a predominantly black cast. You know, that's something that needs to happen, that all audiences can enjoy this. I wouldn't mind seeing an all Asian superhero cast, or, you know, an all Middle East superhero cast. Let's shake things up. Okay, like I said, I like the film. Go see it, you'll enjoy it, but it's not like my favorite Marvel film. It's not a great superhero film because it's just a very familiar story, and some of the acting is okay, but in some cases that's because the characters were underwritten. That's it for now. I think Avengers Infinity War is next. Either that or Deadpool 2. So that'll be the next vlog. I will see you then. Thank you for joining me. This is Comic Book Issues, and I'm your host, The Last Angry Geek.